By 2030, every living baby boomer will have reached 65 plus, creating the largest long-lived population in history. That demographic tsunami is forcing industries to rethink market opportunities, customer life cycle, and employee productivity. The question that companies should be asking is, what happens when almost every customer, every employee, every investor, and everyone starts living 20 to 30 years longer? That pertains to a business model, and it is certainly not an HR issue. Longer lives change who buys your products, how long people stay loyal to your brand, how careers evolve, how wealth is created, how healthcare is delivered, and ultimately, what role organizations play. Very few people are thinking about longevity at this level. Today's guest certainly is. Joining me is Mafalda Honório, Head of Longevity at Fidelidade, Portugal's leading insurance company, where she's helping reimagine how companies think about longevity, reshaping customers, markets, value creations, and the role organizations play in people's lives. Welcome to Hit the Reset, Mafalda.
Thank you, Malu.
And congratulations on being one of the finalists at the 2026 Silver Marketing Association Awards.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited about it.
Fingers crossed. Hope you win it.
Yes, fingers crossed, please.
What we'll do today, Mafalda, is we will break the conversation into three powerful segments. We will talk about people, the mindset shift we desperately need from a longevity perspective, business, how organizations must redesign work and culture, and policy, what governments and institutions need to rethink about the longevity era. Before we get into it, very, very curious about the head of longevity position. It's not a very common position, and I, in fact, heard it for the first time. So want to understand how and when did it start?
So, Malu, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's really an honor. So, trying to get a little back to how digital started. It started nearly 4 years and a half ago. So I didn't come into longevity from healthcare or pensions or aging. So I came from more than 2 decades in consumer marketing. So I was 15 years in Unilever, another nearly 4 to 5 years in another multinational fast-moving consumer goods company, where I learned that transformation starts with understanding people before designing products or services. And that was the perspective that has always shaped every single thing that I do. So and honestly speaking, I've always been very passionate about life. So for me, life is a gift, and I always look at it from the glass half full perspective. So that's why from the very beginning that I was very sure on how longevity should be addressed in terms of a positive approach. So when Fidelidade was a very visionary company, because when they approached me and they invited me to come and to see, okay, so they were very sure that they wanted to address longevity, but longevity was something very new yet. So what was exactly longevity? How should we as a company approach it? So, I mean, they were not sure, and obviously no one was sure yet. So what they wanted was someone with my background and my experience. So not from pensions, not from aging, not from healthcare, but from a pure consumer-driven perspective to come in and to be, senior enough to be able to have a look at, okay, so what is the company's strategy? What are we aiming to do? How does the insurance does the insurance sector can behave and have a place in longevity? What is longevity? So I entered and I started asking, lots of questions to understand how could we understand what should we be doing? How could we address it as a strategy? What was the angle? So I came sort of with a key, to open the door and start seeing how could we as a company could be thinking about it and what kind of vision and strategy we could be, mainly to be able to play this positive role in the society, which is very important for Fidelidade as a company to have this purpose, because it's part of our DNA. Okay. So that's when it all started. It started nearly 4 years and a half ago. Okay.
Was that the first company in Portugal, or is it pretty common?
To be addressing longevity?
Yeah.
No. So Fidelidade is definitely a pioneer in this field. I know that we at Portugal, we are doing an amazing job, I have to tell you, because there are lots of initiatives and Portugal is becoming very known worldwide for all its initiatives around longevity. So we have the Católica Center on Longevity Leadership, we have the Fórum Idade Maior. So we have lots of initiatives, and we have some companies that are starting to approach longevity, but we were the first ones to really address it and to make it one of our strategic pillars. So we are pioneers, definitely. As I was telling you before, I mean, still a long way to go, okay, but very proud of what we've done so far.
But do you see other companies coming up with this title? Because I have never heard of it in Asia. So I'm just wondering.
Yes. Okay. So some other companies are coming up with this job title. So not only in Portugal, but I saw one in Japan. I even talked with them last week. Also in Portugal, there is another head of longevity. So I think it's normal. I mean, longevity is one of the biggest transformations of our time. We know that. That's why we are here today, the two of us. So what I think it's happening is that people are starting to awake. People, companies, society, governments. So it takes time because it's very new, and it will take time, obviously. But I think that more and more people will come. So what started as a pioneer job role, which is mine, so the head of longevity marketing, because since longevity is mainly focused on people, and I'm going to tell you more about that. That's why it's seated in marketing for us. But I mean, this kind of job title, I think it will have to become mainstream because longevity is so important, and it crosses all the company's departments that it's too big to be just within one area of the company or to be within another job title. It deserves full attention, definitely.
So true. So true. Yeah. And one thing I love about your work is that you don't see longevity as just a healthcare issue, and you see it as something that completely reshapes organizations, markets, and society. And you've stated that longevity is not just about aging, it's about life itself. Right. So what do most people still fundamentally misunderstand about longevity?
So I think you framed it perfectly. So I think that what most people still misunderstand about longevity is that it belongs only to later life, and that I see it in a completely different way. So for me, longevity starts the day we are born. It's not about aging at all. It's about the whole life journey, because we are not simply adding years to old age. We are adding years to life. And I mean, it changes everything. It changes how people work, how we learn, how we care, how we save. I mean, how we manage our health, we build relationships, and obviously how we think about our purpose. So if we only treat longevity as a conversation about older people, what happens is that we are narrowing it down. It's not a conversation about older people. It's a conversation about life. And it's also not a conversation about demographics. It's about people. So we have to put people at the center of this conversation. So those for me are the two biggest misunderstandings about longevity, is that it's not old age at all. And it's much more than demographics. It's about people. People have to be at the center of the conversation every single time.
But there seems to be a disconnect between reality and personal behavior, right? If you look at the World Economic Forum, it estimates that by 2030, nearly 1 in 6 people globally will be over 60. Younger generations are expected to have careers for 50 to 60 years, right? Yet most people still plan financially and professionally as though life ends at 65. So where is the disconnect today?
Well, I believe the facts have changed faster than our imagination and our ability to see the reality. Because we know that we are living longer, but many people still imagine life through the old model, the education, work, retirement. And sometimes as if life's most important decisions had to happen before 65. I mean, as if life would end after 65. And we know that's so wrong. We're talking about a 100-year-old life now. And within a few years, it's going to be 120, 150. So we know that by now, lives are much less linear, and they bring more transitions. They bring the reinvention, they bring the caregiving phases, the learning that we'll have to do, and we'll have to do it more than once in our professional chapters. So we know that reality has changed, but the way we think, the way we plan, and the way we organize our lives hasn't changed. So many of our financial decisions, our career expectations, and even our institutions are still based on a life expectancy that no longer reflects that reality. That's why I think that helping people to rethink what longer lives really look like, it's one of our biggest challenges, and at the same opportunities of longevity. Because Otherwise, we won't be able to update. We're always sort of chasing a problem, not being able to prevent it and to prepare for it.
So I think that's one of the biggest challenges your job has, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I think.
So if you could remove one mindset around aging globally, what would it be?
Okay, so regarding aging, I would remove the idea that aging is only about decline. Of course, we all know that aging brings challenges, okay? It can bring challenges when it comes to health, regarding the care needs, the financial security, your independence. But I think that we should never minimize them, because when we reduce aging to decline, we make people fear their future. And that is something that is very dangerous, because if people fear their future, they won't want to think about it. So they will be less likely to prepare for it. So I think that for me, aging is a privilege. I mean, it's a part of life that if we are fortunate enough to experience it, it's good. It means we are alive, right? So it comes with both challenges, obviously, and opportunities as everything else. So for me, the focus, it's on the opportunities always, because I mean, longer lives also bring the contribution, the purpose, the reinvention, the possibility, but they bring something very important. They bring the experience, they bring the maturity that young generations, they often lack of, and that it's so important for the balance, right? We need this balance. So for me, it's to stop seeing aging as a burden and start to recognize it as simply another stage of life, one that deserves to be designed with the same ambition, the same dignity and optimism as any other stage.
I know when you're 50, you have another 50 years to go. So it's like you're just starting off, if you may say that.
Of course. But imagine if you're 15 and you see your father or your grandfather having fear of their future, then it will influence you also when you're 15, not only when you're 60, but when you're 15, because what you see is a feeling of fear rather than a feeling of hope. So it's very important to change that mindset, because the way that we look to aging, I mean, there's a Yale study that just came out very recently on that. I mean, the way that we see our own aging, it will have influence on how well we age. So it's very important also from a personal perspective, as I was saying. So not only for the 60 and the 50s and the 40s, but also for the 50s, the old generations. If we see our family, our relatives feeling fear and feeling lonely and feeling sad about being older and about aging, that will somehow influence us. And that's not good. The influence has to be a positive one. It has to make us feeling hope and very positive about the future, so that we want to prepare it and to prevent and to think about it. It's very important that we think about it.
It's so true. We start talking about aging and longevity when people are in their 40s, but if you look at it honestly, it should start in schools, right? So in fairy tales and in textbooks, people who are older are depicted in a certain way, right? And that's the image that you carry with you. And at 40, you're told, oh, that's wrong. There's another way of looking at it. So I think education needs to change to start with. I mean, we'll talk about the policies later, but
Yes.
unless people are told at a very young age, this segmentation doesn't need to be a separate segment at all. I mean, if you ask, right, it can be part of life, as you rightly said in one of your earlier interviews. So
it's true. And education, well, we'll talk about it later, but it plays a fundamental role.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if people are changing, then customers are changing. And if customers are changing, business has to change too, right? So if we were to move to the business aspect, even if mindsets evolve, most organizations currently seem to be operating with very outdated structures. As you rightly said, they talk about retirement. They talk about, not helping the seniors get back. So there is a structured way in which they're operating today, and that needs to change. Before we get into that, you work in insurance and industry traditionally associated with risk and protection, right? How do you shift an organization from protecting people from aging to helping them thrive through longer lives?
Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, so for me, the shift starts by changing the question. So instead of asking only how do we protect people when something goes wrong, which has been, I mean, the basic of insurance business, we also need to ask how can we help people prepare earlier, make better choices, and live longer lives with more health, more dignity, and more confidence. Because protection remains essential, of course. I mean, insurance will always have a critical role when people face risk or illness or loss or vulnerability, that's for sure. But from a business perspective, helping people prevent or delay those risks also makes sense, right? So in any business, reducing the likelihood of an impact or a claim is valuable not only for the customer, but also for the sustainability of our business itself. So it's in fact a win-win. So this is why I believe that the future of insurance is not choosing whether we should go for protection. I mean, where we should go for protection or for prevention or preparation. I think it's a combination of both, because the more we can help people to stay healthier, to stay more financially prepared, to be resilient throughout life, the more value also they will create for them and the more sustainable the business will be. So at Fidelidade, that kind of thinking led us to build our longevity strategy through the lens of the 100-year life, okay, always placing people at the center, as I was telling. So what we realized is that our role could no longer start when only people needed protection. It had to start much sooner than that, through prevention and preparation. So we kind of structured our strategy into around two priorities. First, we called the elders of today. So imagine the whole timeline from 0 to 100, and we divided our timeline between the elders of today and the elders of tomorrow. And I'm going to walk you through that. So elders of today are the people age 60 plus or over. So they sort of represent the immediate responsibility and opportunity that we have, and that we know that we need to support them because they are already experienced the reality and the challenges of longer lives. So here our focus is to strengthen our protection of care, of support, and to truly protect them through the challenges they are already facing. Then we have the elders of tomorrow, so people under 60. And they remind us that longevity starts much earlier than old age. So our focus for them, it's work on prevention and preparation. Why? Because we want to help people build a longer, a healthier, and a more financial security lives before the challenges emerge. So what we want to make sure is that when the elders of tomorrow become elders of today, they will be in a very different situation than the elders of today are currently. Okay. So, but the 100-year life reminds us that life is not a stage of life. It's a whole life journey. So what we do is by putting people at the center, which it changes completely the way we think about our role. It's not simply protecting people when something happens, but to walk all the life journey with them. You see, to be the true life partner throughout their whole lives. So for me, that's the real shift. It's from being present only when something happens to become the true partner throughout people's lives and to make them the whole life journey from the 0 to 100.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
It's very ambitious and it's very tough. And as I'm going to tell you, we are not completely there yet, not at all, but we are starting. And that's why I was saying I'm very proud of what we have built so far, but there's still a long way to go. So we have not fully implemented all of this yet, but this is the path that we are aiming to pursue.
As they say, well begun is half done. So
yes.
An insurance question. Okay. I may be completely wrong. This is my limited knowledge on the insurance. I was reading about it and I found that a lot of people drop out of paying premium as they age. Could be because of the cash crunch. Once they retire, they probably don't have the money to pay. So they just drop out of it. The premium seems to be based on age rather than the health index of a person. For example, let me share this. Two 60-year-olds, okay, can have different lifestyles. One is very focused, goes to the gym, eats healthy, and the other is the opposite. But then both end up paying the same premium because they belong to a same age bracket, right? Assume that all other indicators are equal, right? Should that change? Because, why should the insurance premium be based on health? Isn't that what it is today? I may be wrong. I'm just asking you this question.
I think that, you're right when it comes to, it will obviously have to change. The insurance models are very based in life expectancy, in age, of course, to determine the kind of premiums that people should pay, but they are also based on behaviors. So if you have two 6-year-old people, but it also depends on a kind of behavior they already have. What are I was trying to find the English word, sorry. What kind of, it's not background. What kind of previous situations did the person already had when it comes to the insurance use, or did the person already have any health issues or not? So obviously, I believe that there are lots of things that we'll have to consider, of course. But one of the things that I think it's more important is that we have to educate people that rather than making an insurance when they are 60 or 50, they should make their insurance very early when they're younger. And what we have to do us as insurance companies is work with them on preparation and prevention so that the insurance will become much more affordable as they are growing older. You see why? Because I mean, if we educate people on how to prepare and how to prevent, obviously, and how to do regular checkups and to be more aware of their health, what will happen is also we believe that the kind of premiums they will have to pay later will not be as high as they are today. Why? Because they have been educated to act in a very different way. But obviously, Malu, to be honest, I think that not only in insurance, but in most business, there are a lot of things that we will still need to rethink and to make sure that we are able to make it more fair. But our way the way we see it is that by focusing on preparation and prevention, we are able to make for us a business more sustainable, but mainly we are able to help people to have a better life. I mean, a healthier life, a more prepared life when it comes to financial, obviously. And obviously that will be seen through the premiums that they will have to pay within insurance. But yeah, lots of things that we will have to rethink, obviously.
Yeah.
And to adapt. I mean, longer lives will require most of businesses to adapt. Yeah.
I guess so. Because if you look at we're still talking about segmentation. If you take any survey today, the first question is, what is your age? What category do you belong to? 18 to 25, 25 to 40, 40 to 60, right? So does longevity force organizations to move away from age-based segmentation, or how should organizations rethink customer segmentation?
Well, to be honest, I don't think you have to choose one over the other. I think that you need both. And why? Because understanding age, it's also important because it helps us to understand different stages of life that bring different opportunities, challenges, and priorities. So what I believe is that longer lives made one thing clear. Age alone is no longer enough to understand people. Okay, it's very short. It's an entry point, but it's very short. Why? Well, because obviously the same people, as you were saying, you can have 260 plus people that have completely different lifestyles and health trackers and everything. So the same person will experience more transitions throughout lives so it depends on the kind of different career, your different habits, what do you do with your life. So for me, it means that organizations need to complement an age-based understanding with a much deeper understanding of people's lives. Okay, so let me give you an example of why did we started with age segmentation, because it helped us to understand. So what we realized is that we had lots of information regarding insurance buying behavior, but we had very little information regarding people. That's why we started with age. So we started with age, and we started by doing qualitative research because we wanted to gather insights. So our goal was we want to get insights on the people, not insurance related questions. What we wanted to understand is, who are these people? What are they doing? How are they living their lives? Where are they? How are their daily habits? What are their hopes, their fears, their dreams? And we did it not only for the 60 plus. So later, only after those studies, we did the cutoff between elders of today and elders of tomorrow. So what we did is the first research was from 50 onwards, and the other research was from 20 to 65. Because what we wanted to understand was, as I was saying, who are the people? Because what we realized was that us, as an insurance company, we were lacking that kind of understanding. And if we wanted to really do this 100-year life strategy and to really understand people and to protect them, we can only protect those that we know, right? So that's why we did the study. And only after the study, we realized, okay, so let's pause for a moment and let's understand the kind of behaviors. And what we realize is that, okay, so first mistake, most people say the 50 plus or the 60 plus, as if they were all the same. They are not, okay? And I can tell you a little bit about that more later. But for us, why was the cutoff at 60? Because it was when it makes sense for us. It was when we understand that until 60, people were still very trying to prove themselves at their jobs. So the job was still something very important in their lives. And we were talking about that, part of their identity. And from 60 onwards, even though people were still working, their relationship towards work was different. They didn't feel they have to prove anymore. They were starting to think about their next phase. And for us, also considering the retirement age here in Portugal, that was where our cutoff made sense. But that was our entry point. I mean, that was the entry point for our strategy. It's not the end game, okay? It's the starting point. Because what we wanted was, okay, so let's understand them. Those are our two targets. So the elders of today and the elders of tomorrow. Let's start working with the elders of today. Why? Because we know they need our help now. Let's work at the same time within the elders of tomorrow, because later what we need to do is to connect them. Okay, so what we need to do is recognizing that they are not separate people. They are simply at different stages of the same life journey. And what we want to do is, our end game is to bring those two perspectives together through the vision of the 100-year life. But for us, it made sense to start with age. So I cannot say that, well, it's wrong or it's not. I think that we need to have both approaches, and also to understand in what kind of company and what kind of segment we were. For instance, if I was in fast moving consumer goods, probably the approach would be different. But in insurance, as the insurance business is traditionally, the insurance business traditionally started as mandatory insurances. So insurance companies, they didn't need to have this consumer knowledge that, for instance, I have to have at fast moving consumer goods. So historically, just imagine that insurance business was several steps behind when it comes to consumer knowledge. Something that we've been overcoming. Over the past years, Fidelidade and other insurance companies have been investing a lot in getting to know the consumers, in better understand them, in learning how to communicate with them. So that fortunately has changed. But for us as a company, this is what made sense. So age was our entry point. Life is our end destination. So it depends. It really depends on the companies. Okay. But my message would be, don't stop at age. So as I was saying, age for us was the entry point. I believe that probably for some companies, it might be the entry point, but it cannot be the end game. It cannot be. Life is the end game, the whole life journey.
Yeah. And it can't be just the single data that you need, right? It's just one of the data that you connect.
Yes, of course.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So tell me, from a customer's perspective, if they are going to remain with organizations for 60 or 70 years, customer relationship will also completely change, right? So how should organizations rethink trust over a lifetime rather than over a transaction? Because this is a long-term relationship with people now, given what it used to be earlier.
It's true. I think that, trust changes completely in a world of longer lives, as you were saying. It's so different. So it's no longer built around a single transaction. It's built through continued relevance over time. So it means that, more responsibility for companies. So longer lives, we know, and we talked about, they bring more transitions. They bring the changing careers, the caring for partner, for parents, the becoming grandparents, the managing health, the financial preparedness, even finding your purpose, the retiring, and sometimes starting all over again. Right? So each of these moments is a unique opportunity to either create value or to become irrelevant. So every company has to choose, do I want to create value or do I want to become irrelevant? And that means that organizations also need to stop asking, how do I sell another product more or another service? And the question is a completely different one. The question is, how can we remain relevant throughout this person's life? That's the right question. So for me, that's what becoming a true life partner truly means. Not being present only when there is a transaction, but be present whenever people need help making better decisions throughout their lives. And that starts with understanding people. And I'm back to people again, because that's the core. Because throughout my career, that's the one principle that has always guided me. So before designing products, before designing services, before designing the experiences, we need to understand the people we are designing for, because otherwise, we won't be able to succeed. So we know that people don't experience life in silos, right? So we can't expect organizations to think in silos either. But that happens. That still happens. So organizations will have to build trust, and not necessarily to sell more products. Sometimes they won't be able to sell in the short term, but to be able to collect in the long term. So I believe that the organizations that will succeed are the ones that will help people navigate more in their complex lives. And to be able to do it, again, those are the organizations that need to understand people. And by people, I mean every single stage of people's lives. And I would also be very bold and say that, well, most organizations, they have invested a lot in understanding younger generations. Okay. So if you look at data, you know that there's a lot of information regarding people under 55 or under 60, all generations, everything. And then when we look at the 60 plus, and even though I said they are very different and they have different segments, allow me just to put it for once in the same basket. But when we talk about the 60 plus, we just put it in the same basket, and that's completely wrong, because there are different segments, there are different people, and this is the generation that is redefining what it means to age. So I believe we have so much to learn from them, because what is happening is that these people, they are invisible for most businesses, most brands, most companies. So it's sort of, you become 50 and you become sort of invisible. No one talks with you. If they talk with you, they talk with you about diapers, hearing devices, or funerary, so completely wrong. And I mean, people above 60, they are living their lives, they are chasing their dreams, they are active, they have purchasing power, and they want to connect with brands, right? So the feeling is the same. So what happens? What happens with brands and what happens with companies? So I also think that to build this kind of trust relationship, companies need to invest in deeply understanding the consumer, and they deeply need to invest in understanding them in a later life, because that's where the lack of knowledge truly becomes very big. And that's where we started. So we started, and we, as I was telling you, we have these two segments, but we started focusing on the 60 plus, not only because we realized that we need to protect them, but we realized, okay, no one is talking with them. So not even us. I mean, when we look at ourselves, at our communication strategy, for instance, we had them as clients, but we were not including them in our communication. So that's why we also changed that. And what we did is, for the products that, well, we can sell to every single generation, and we can also sell to older people, let's start including them, but let's start portraying them in a proper way, in a way these generations truly are. And what we did also is we did another campaign specifically for the 60 plus, because we wanted to sort of make a statement and to tell these people, we see you. We see this generation that is redefining what it means to age. And that was the campaign that was awarded as one of the 12 best worldwide campaigns by Robert Ford. So we're very proud of that. So back to your question, to build a trust relationship, it's very important for companies to mainly understand people and to understand every single phase of them, and to be able to compromise the short term for the long term. I know it's difficult. I come from business. I've always worked on business, but sometimes it's necessary to be able to do that, and to have that kind of courage and invest.
I think your marketing background helps with this, because if you remember, even till today, when you get a call from a bank or an insurance company, they're selling you something without really understanding who you are and is this a product that's relevant for you. They have a KPI and they call. So you get annoyed when you get calls from these segments. And I think with your kind of an understanding of what it is, and to understand people, and if you were to call me and give me something that is relevant to me, I think I would be more than happy to talk to the person, right? So I think, yeah, that's a really good strategy. Yeah.
Of course. I think that you're completely right. I mean, I come from love brands market. It's true. And insurance companies, unfortunately, they are not love brands yet. But what I believe is that, well, there is the potential not to become a love brand per se as the objective, but as a consequence, because we have this huge responsibility, right? I mean, we have this huge responsibility. We are the only business that is present in 3 of the 4 pillars of longevity. So the health, the wealth, the care, not the self that will be influenced indirectly, but we have this huge responsibility. So at the same time, I mean, if it's not for us also to be able to do it and to prepare and to work with prevention with our customers, I mean, who else is going to do it? Of course, banks and hospitals and everything, but this is something that we also need to do. So I think you're right. And we are starting to change that. So we no longer call people just to talk to them about selling something. We also call people to offer them something. We have some financial literacy programs. We have some prevention programs. For instance, we have this program, which is the Multicare Vitality, which rewards healthier behaviors. So we are giving people something and to try to educate them also. But obviously, I mean, there's still a long way to go.
I think insurance has taken the first step when it comes to longevity, thanks to you. So what are the other industries that are going to experience the biggest transformation because of longevity?
Well, I
Not
think that
just because of the population is aging, but because the customer's behavior itself is changing these days, right?
I would be very provocative and tell you, just please name me one industry that won't be affected by longevity,
Very.
because I already thought about it. And to be honest, I think that every single business is going to be affected by longevity. But obviously, I think that some of them and some of us have probably a bigger responsibility than others. But I mean, obviously, when it comes to longevity, we think about those four pillars, right? The health. We cannot talk about longevity without health. So every single company that it's health connected, it will be hugely impacted, and it has a huge opportunity and responsibility as well. The wealth. So banks, financial institutions, all of them, insurance companies that work within financial markets, obviously. So the wealth also, the care. And the care is very interesting because the care is a sort of a rising pillar within longevity, because as families are becoming smaller and people have fewer children, the informal care supports, they will no longer be enough. So every single organization that will be able to help within the care dimension, it's very important. And obviously the self, but the self is different because the self, it depends on the kind of purpose, the kind of dreams, the kind of things that you want to fulfill. So, I mean, if you're someone that, for instance, says, and I've interviewed lots of people that say, no, I realize that when I get 60, I'm going to be in a lots of physical activity. So I'm going to be very healthy because I'm going to the gym and everything I haven't done in the whole life. So then all the gym part and in the health part, but connected with physical exercise, it becomes very important. The nutrition part, the sleep part. So the mental health. So I think that every single sector has a huge responsibility to play within longevity. For us at Fidelidade, what we believe is that we are uniquely positioned because we are an insurance company, but we are an insurance company that works the health, the wealth, and the care. So it gives us a huge responsibility, but at the same time, it's an extraordinary business opportunity, right? So what we believe is that, I mean, if we want to help people to become prepared for longer lives, then there's also another role that we need to play. And let me just briefly talk to you about that, is that we already talked how difficult it is for younger generations to think about longevity. And you're saying about that, you're giving the example of the 15-year-old, right? So the 15-year-old feels immortal, the 20 also, and probably the 30 also. And what we see is that, okay, younger generations, they feel that I don't need to think about longevity because I don't even know what it is. It's very far away. I cannot imagine it. So what we realize is that there is this barrier. How can we positively influence people to start preparing themselves and to start thinking about their own prevention if they cannot imagine their futures? So what we think is that, okay, so people are more likely to prepare and to think about it if they are able to somehow feel more connected to their futures. So that's why we created this new project. I don't know if you tried it, Malu. It's Longevity AI by Fidelidade. If you have, just let me know. And if you haven't, please do. And I would love to hear. So our ambition was never to build another AI tool. It was not the technology itself. What we wanted to create it was an experience that helped people to visualize their future selves and to realize that longevity is not something that begins only in later life, but it begins now. I mean, it begins the day we are born. So it means that the choices that you make today, they will have impact in your future. And what we see is that once the future feels real and feels personal, once you're able to see yourself in it, something changes because people start asking different questions. For instance, how do I want to age? I mean, you look at yourself, you hear yourself because you hear your 100-year-old self. And what you start thinking is, do I want to age like that? So am I doing enough to take care of my health? Am I financially prepared? And you start asking yourself all these questions. What is the kind of life that I want to build? And that is very important. That is why we did it, because we realized, okay, we had this responsibility and we are taking care of it with our offer, with our communication, with the partnerships and everything that we're building. But let's go one step further. I mean, we have to go one step further. We have to help people become aware of their own longevity. We have to make it personal. So we know that once you can see yourself in the future, it all changes because people cannot prepare for futures they cannot imagine. So that for us, it's what it means to become a true life partner. And my challenge for most companies and most organizations is just find your angle. I mean, as I was saying, I cannot think about a single sector that will not be impacted by longevity and that will not be able to play its role and to have a positive impact in what longevity can build. So my challenge is the opposite. It's think of your own business, think where you can add extra value to the people and what role you want to play, and just start. That's what we are doing.
Very interesting. I think you're right. I mean, besides the segments that you spoke about, travel gets impacted, housing gets impacted, retail, education, everything. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you say it's going to affect almost every sector.
Travel becomes hugely impacted, really, also. Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
true.
and education. We were talking about that also,
Yeah.
education regarding, I mean, now more and more you see more people wanting to come back to study. So you have these intergenerational colleges that are showing up in the United States and everything. So
Yes.
it's very interesting.
I know. So whatever we spoke about so far, you've been implementing these concepts within your organization without revealing confidential information. What surprised you the most when you actually started implementing?
So what was the biggest challenge, you mean, right?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we face two big challenges, of course. So one obviously internal, okay, and it's normal. I mean, when you bring something new to a company, what you feel is that okay. So what will people start asking? I mean, the biggest question I got was, okay, so what is it? What are you doing? And I think that my biggest challenge in the beginning was, okay, so how am I going to make people understand the kind of value I'm trying to bring? And also that I'm not interfering in what they are building, because I'm not. What I'm trying to build is an extra layer. So I mean, I'm not a threat to anyone. It's quite the opposite. So just keep on doing whatever you're doing, and you're doing an amazing job. And let's bring this extra layer that will unite everything that you are doing, all the dots, all the initiatives, and that will have a different storytelling, a more engaging one, and a different narrative and vision that will empower the company even more. So that's how we build it as a strategic pillar. So that was more for an internal perspective. I think it was just to make sure that everyone was fully aligned and fully on board. Okay. From a market perspective, I think that, well, there are still some challenges. I mean, as we were saying, the world is still awakening for this longevity reality. I talk with other companies, I talk with other people, and I feel that I have a kind of urgency that is different from most people that surround me, because, well, I also live this every single day, so it's normal. And I come from fast moving consumer goods, so fast market. I'm normally very fast also. So my way of working, I always like to move forward and to make sure that we are moving forward. So I think that the main challenge that we as a company face is that we are probably more aware than most companies are. So as we were saying, it's good to be a pioneer, but that it also gives us a sort of anxiety, you see. So, okay, so other companies are not there yet. So it gives us the time to prepare for everything we believe it's important. But at the same time, sometimes it looks as we are in a different reality than other companies. At least sometimes I do feel that. But I believe that my job and my role is also to influence that and to make sure that more and more companies and more people are aware that this is not happen. This is not something that will happen. This is happening. Okay. So the sooner you understand it's happening, the sooner you make sure you understand what role you want to play in it and what role you're able to play in it, the better. The better for the people, the better for the company, the better for the society.
And changing a corporate culture is not easy at all. So
no, it's not, and I think it's still a process. Okay, so if you ask, is it fully implemented? No, it's not. Of course not. And I mean, we've been doing this great job all together, and we're making sure that longevity is understood across all organizations. So I was saying you, even though I'm based in marketing, I'm not only in marketing. So I work across all the areas within the company, obviously, and with very important departments. So obviously with HR, with the strategic department and everything, because we have to be all fully aligned on what we are building as a company. And that is very important because longevity has to be a part of the company's DNA. Otherwise, we won't succeed. Otherwise, it's just a niche strategy, and niche strategies won't be able to make important changes. So for now, we are able to say very proudly that longevity is one of our strategic pillars. And I think it's very important, but obviously there is still a job to be done yet.
I know this is similar to what the issue we had with gender parity in the past, right?
Yes.
till
Yes.
it became a business proposition. It was just another one that HR was handling, and they never took it seriously until it became a major business strategic point of view, and also to explain how it helps a business. Rather than saying we're doing it as a social cause, it became more of a strategic imperative, I guess.
It's true, and we were saying earlier. I mean, every single company has to decide, obviously, whether to start approaching longevity. Most companies are approaching it from an HR perspective, and I cannot say it's wrong or it's right. What I say is that what is important is for companies to start. Obviously, it depends. For us, it made sense to start from a business perspective. And obviously, I'm very aligned with the HR, with the HR department, who is doing also an amazing job. And what we are doing is we're making sure that, okay, so if you have this longevity strategy, it has to work for our consumers, but it has to work internally also, because longevity is for every single person. I mean, I'm the same person, and I work and I consume. So we're talking always about the same people that works, that consumes, that saves. So we have to make sure that as organizations, we are able to have a longevity strategy that works both for consumers and also for our internal workers. So it's very important to make sure it's fully aligned, no matter where it starts. But sometimes it's easier to start from business and then to expand it to the other parts of the organization than to start in HR and then bring it to business. But it depends.
I think, the buy-in is faster if it's a business proposition, I guess. Right?
Yes, because if it's company, yes, because I mean, companies, even though obviously there is this huge responsibility and social responsibility, and it has to be very important, a very important layer. But at the end, it's a business, so it has to be profitable, and that's also the point.
Yeah. From a policy perspective, if you were advising governments globally, what are the top 3 policy shifts you would prioritize immediately from a longevity perspective?
Okay, so I will always speak from a business perspective because that's where I stand, but give you some ideas. So I would prioritize 3 things.
Yeah.
First, make prevention and preparedness a national priority. Okay. And we talked about it during our conversation today. That starts with education. Okay. So if we want people to make better decisions through longer lives, we need to start where people first acquire their knowledge, because I believe that financial literacy, health literacy, and also a broader understanding of longevity should become part of education from an early stage. We all know that knowledge is power. So the earlier people understand the implications of longer lives, the better equipped they will all be to make the better decisions and to shape their own futures. So if we want to change behaviors, we need to start before those behaviors are formed. That was the first thing. Second thing would be to redesign work for longer lives. So we know, and we've talked about it, that people no longer work. I mean, people will work longer, so they will have more transitions throughout their lives than previous generations did. So education systems, labor markets, they were not designed for the realities that we have today. So governments need to create policies that support lifelong learning, career transitions, reskilling, more flexible ways of working, and also recognizing that longer careers are unlikely to be linear. And that's very important. We need to move away from the traditional model of education, work, retirement towards a more flexible life course, okay, where people continue to learn, to contribute, and to reinvent themselves. And third, that's that's probably the most difficult one, the biggest challenge. I would make longevity a cross-government agenda. And what do I mean? So today's governments are still organized in silos: the health, the education, the employment, the pension systems. But we know that people don't experience life in silos, right? And longevity, it's about life, it's about people. We know that health influences wealth, that wealth influences health, and that care influences employment, right? And education shapes all of them. So if longevity is transforming life itself, then governments also need to stop designing policies in isolation and to start designing them around people's lives. So a sort of a way to make sure that combining them all, because I mean, in the end, longevity is not simply about helping people to live longer. It's also to help live longer with health, financial security, the care, the purpose, and the dignity, right? And what I always feel is that governments are still spending too much time and energy focused on today's problems. They are not preparing for tomorrow's reality. And I believe that with these 3 things, and as I told you, I mean, I think that all of them are challenges. The last one is the bigger challenges, but those are all to focus on that. We need to make sure that we are not only running behind, we need to make sure that we are thinking ahead, we are preparing for the future, because that's the only way we can actually be thinking about longevity. And governments, they play a huge role on this.
So it's education system, labor markets, and make longevity a part of the all-encompassing agenda of the government.
So
Is that
cross-government agenda, yes.
cross-government?
Rather than health policies, wealth policies, education policies, let's find a way to make sure that we can combine them and make sure that we are properly addressing longevity. Because otherwise, I mean, you're covering health, but you're uncovering wealth with the decisions that you're making in health. You're covering the wealth, but then with the decisions, you're not looking at the health. And the same with the care and the pensions and the education. So unless we think about this from a global perspective, yes, and sort of an umbrella perspective, you see. So we have to just look from above down and to look, okay, so these all have to connect. This has to be, everything has to be connected, because that's longevity, that's life. And at the end, that's what we need as people.
I hope we have a few policymakers listening to this conversation.
I hope so too.
Mafalda, throughout our conversation, you've challenged us to think beyond products, beyond employees, and even beyond life aging itself. So if every CEO, every CHRO, and every policymaker listening today could walk away with just one message from your work, what would you want them to remember about the longevity economy?
Okay, so what I would want them to remember is that longevity is not aging. So please don't look at longevity as aging, because if we do, the only thing that you'll see is a sort of a problem that needs to be addressed. And longevity, it's not that. Longevity, it's a huge opportunity. So please look at the whole life journey. If you had doubts, look at the numbers. The numbers are compelling, and every CEO needs to look at the numbers. So the numbers don't lie. And I think that's the most interesting thing for a CEO to understand, that, well, even though you can play a role within your company and to be able to act as a pioneer when it comes to be responsible and to be social responsible, the numbers are very important, I know, and it will become profitable. And the last thing that I would say to them is that just don't be afraid to start. I mean, longevity is here. So either you start it from a business perspective, and again, look at the numbers, or either you start it from a HR perspective, just start, because it's here. Every single business has a role to play, and just find your angle and find your role, because at the end, it will be worth it. It will definitely be worth it.
Okay, longevity is not aging. That was such an insightful conversation, Mafalda. Gives a completely different perspective when you speak to somebody who's actually implementing processes and policies. I think the main takeaway for me is that longevity is about reimagining how organizations create value, how they build relationships with customers, how they support employees, and ultimately the role they play in the society. The organizations that embrace this shift, as you have done, won't just be better prepared for the future. I think they will be pioneers who can help shape it. Mafalda, thank you so much for the work you're doing in the space, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Malu. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.